Pierce, sitting in a cramped studio apartment in Sihanoukville, Cambodia, stares at the peeling paint on the wall. At 87 years old, this wasn't how he imagined his final years. I lost $480,000 in Thailand. 20 years of my life, my dignity, my relationship with my daughters, and the worst part, I handed it all over willingly, one smile at a time. 20 years. 2 full decades that started with hope and ended in humiliation. 20 years of believing Nitaya loved him, that they were building something real together, that age didn't matter when you found your soulmate. Sitting here in Cambodia, watching geckos crawl across his ceiling in a $200 a month room, he can't help but wonder how differently things could have turned out. The Philippines had been his original destination. Cheaper, English-speaking, easier for Americans. But his friend Larry had convinced him otherwise. Thailand's got everything, Pierce. Beautiful women who appreciate older men. Your pension will make you rich there. You'll live like a king. Larry was right about one thing. Thailand had everything. Everything designed to separate foolish old men from their money. Thailand taught Pierce a lesson he'll never forget. A smile doesn't mean kindness. Tradition doesn't mean honesty. And love, real love, can't be bought, no matter how much you're willing to spend. But by the time he learned that lesson, he had nothing left to show for it except regret, and a dwindling bank account that keeps him awake at night. Doing math he's too old to be doing. Wondering if he'll outlive his money or if his money will outlive him. Let me take you back to 2003. Pierce was 67, American, and he'd just become a widower after 40 years of marriage. His wife, Margaret, had died of cancer after a brutal 2-year fight. They'd raised 2 daughters, built a comfortable middle-class life in Phoenix, Arizona, and planned to travel the world in retirement. But cancer had other plans. Pierce had approximately $550,000 after settling Margaret's medical bills and final expenses. Between his military pension from 20 years in the Air Force and his Social Security, he was pulling in about $3,800 a month. That was more than enough to live comfortably in Phoenix, but after Margaret died, the house felt like a mausoleum. Every room held memories. The kitchen where she'd cooked Sunday dinners. The living room where they'd watched TV together every evening. The bedroom where she'd spent her final months, wasting away while Pierce felt completely helpless. His daughters, Jennifer and Sarah, had their own families, their own lives. They'd been supportive during Margaret's illness, but afterward the relationship felt strained. They thought he was mourning too much, then not enough. When he mentioned maybe traveling or moving, they got defensive, as if he was betraying their mother's memory by wanting to live again. Pierce felt like he'd spent his whole life doing the right thing. Military service, stable career, good husband, reliable father. Now he was 67 alone, and realizing he'd never taken risks, never lived spontaneously, never done anything just because he wanted to. A friend who'd been living in Pattaya for 5 years kept telling him about his life there. You can live like a king on pension money, Pierce. The weather's perfect year-round. Food costs nothing. And the women, they actually appreciate men like us, not like back home where we're invisible. Larry would send photos, himself on beaches, at restaurants, always with a young Thai woman smiling beside him. "This is Som," one caption read. "She takes care of everything. Cooks, cleans, keeps me company. Costs less than a housekeeper back home." Pierce thought Larry was exaggerating, but the idea planted itself. Margaret had always wanted to travel to Asia. Maybe this was a way to honor her memory, see the places they'd planned to visit together. He researched retirement destinations online. The Philippines kept coming up. English-speaking, large expat community, affordable. But Larry kept pushing Thailand. Philippines is okay, but Thailand's better. More developed. Better food. Prettier women. Trust me, Pierce, you'll love it. In October 2003, Pierce arrived in Bangkok. The heat hit him like a physical force, and the chaos of Suvarnabhumi Airport was overwhelming. Announcements in Thai echoing through terminals, crowds moving in patterns he didn't understand, the humid air mixing with unfamiliar smells. Larry met him at the airport, looking tanned and relaxed in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts. They took a taxi to Pattaya, and Pierce watched Bangkok's skyline give way to highways, then smaller cities, then finally the coastal sprawl of Pattaya. Those first few weeks felt surreal. Pattaya was nothing like Phoenix. Neon lights reflected off wet streets even during the day. Motorbikes wove through traffic with terrifying precision. High-rise condos stood next to street food stalls where vendors served dishes Pierce couldn't identify. Larry set him up in a furnished studio apartment for 12,000 baht a month, about $300. Food, drinks, entertainment. Pierce was spending maybe $200 a month total, and he was eating well, going out regularly, living comfortably. "See?" Larry said. "I told you. Your pension makes you rich here." Pierce felt like he'd discovered a secret. Everything was affordable. Everyone was friendly. The Thai people smiled constantly. Land of smiles, Larry called it. Even the language barrier didn't matter much. Enough people spoke basic English to get by. If he'd just kept things that way, simple, cheap, smart, none of what followed would have happened. He could have lived comfortably for decades on his savings and pension, maybe even left something for his daughters. But Pierce wasn't thinking about simple. He was thinking about the empty apartment that felt too quiet at night. He was thinking about eating dinner alone while couples laughed at nearby tables. He was thinking about Margaret and how he'd promised her at the hospital that he'd keep living, that he wouldn't just wait around to die. He was thinking about not being alone anymore. And that's when he met her. Pierce had been in Thailand for about 4 months when he met Nitaya. It was February 2004, and Larry had dragged him to a small Thai restaurant on Soi Buakau. Best pad Thai in Pattaya, Larry claimed, though Pierce suspected Larry's real interest was the young waitress who always gave him extra spring rolls. Nitya was working that evening. She was 22, petite with the kind of delicate features that made her look even younger. Unlike the heavily made-up women Pierce had seen working in the bars Larry frequented, Nitya wore minimal makeup and dressed modestly, just a simple t-shirt and jeans, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She spoke broken English, struggling through the menu items, apologizing when Pierce asked questions she didn't understand. There was something shy about her, almost uncertain, as if she was still learning the job. "You want spicy?" she asked, pointing at the chicken dish he'd ordered. "A little bit," Pierce said, holding his fingers close together. She smiled, not the practiced mechanical smile he'd seen on other service workers, but something genuine that reached her eyes. "It's okay. I tell kitchen, Farang spicy, not Thai spicy." During the meal, she checked on their table several times. Each time she'd linger just a moment, and Pierce found himself wanting to talk to her. Larry noticed, of course. "She's cute," Larry said after Nitya walked away. "Want me to ask if she's interested?" "Larry, she's working. Leave her alone. This is Thailand, buddy. Different rules." But when Pierce was paying the bill, Nitya brought the change and stood there for a moment, hesitating. Finally, she said, "You come back?" "Sure," Pierce said, surprised by how much he meant it. Food was good. "I work Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday," she said quickly, then looked embarrassed as if she'd revealed too much. Pierce came back the following Tuesday, and Thursday, and Saturday. Each time Nitya seemed pleased to see him, and their conversations grew gradually longer. His regular order became a routine. She'd bring it without him asking, adjusted to his preferred level of spice. On his 4th visit, during a quiet moment, she sat down at his table uninvited. "You stay Pattaya long time?" she asked. "I'm retired. Might stay indefinitely." "Retire young," she said, then caught herself. "Sorry, it's fine," Pierce laughed. "I'm 67, not that young." Her eyes widened genuinely. "I think maybe 55, 60. It was probably flattery, but Pierce felt pleased anyway. They talked for about 20 minutes before other customers needed attention. She told him she was from Udon Thani province, from a village he'd never heard of. Her family were rice farmers. She'd dropped out of school at 16 to help support her younger siblings. "I have daughter," she said, pulling out her phone to show him a photo. A beautiful little girl, maybe 4 years old. "She stay with my mother in village. I work here, send money. What about her father?" Nitya's face darkened. "Thai man, no good. He go away when I pregnant." She paused. "Before I work. Different place. Not good place. Now I work here, better." She didn't elaborate on different place, and Pierce didn't push. He could guess. Pattaya had thousands of massage parlors and bars where young women from poor rural areas ended up. "You're working hard to take care of your family," Pierce said. "That's admirable." Something in her eyes shifted. Gratitude, maybe, or recognition that he'd treated her observation with respect rather than judgment. Pierce knew what Larry would say. Bar girl, poor village kid, deadbeat Thai ex-boyfriend. He'd heard variations of this story a dozen times already from other women he'd met in passing. Larry called it the script, but with Nitaya it felt different. She wasn't pushy. She didn't immediately ask for anything. She just seemed real, like she saw him as a person, not as a walking wallet. Over the next few weeks, Pierce became a regular fixture at the restaurant. Nitya would take her break at his table and they'd talk. About her daughter. About his late wife. He found himself opening up more than he'd intended. About the strange contrasts of Pattaya. About her dreams of saving enough money to open a small business someday. 2 months after they met, Nitaya called him crying. Her mother was sick, needed medicine the family couldn't afford. The hospital wouldn't treat her without payment up front. She needed 100,000 baht. Pierce did the math, about $2,500. He didn't even hesitate. "I'll take care of it," he said. The relief in her voice was palpable. "I pay you back. I promise. You don't have to—" "No, I pay back, maybe a little bit every month." She never paid him back. But at the time, that seemed irrelevant. If this was real, if she was real, then helping her family was the right thing to do. This was an investment in showing her he was serious, that he wasn't like the other foreign men she'd probably encountered, that he valued her as more than just a pretty face. When he gave her the money, her smile changed. Years later, he'd remember that moment and wonder if that was when he lost her, or if he'd never really had her at all. Over the next 8 months, Pierce and Nitaya's relationship deepened in ways that felt natural, almost inevitable. Nitaya quit the restaurant job. Pierce offered her 15,000 baht a month, about $375, so she wouldn't have to work. "You should spend time with your daughter," he said. "Bring her down from the village. We'll rent a bigger place." They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment for 18,000 baht a month. Nitaya's daughter, Ploy, came to live with them. The girl was shy at first, but she warmed to Pierce quickly. He'd buy her small treats, toys from the market, ice cream on evening walks. Playing with Ploy brought back memories of when his own daughters were young, before life got complicated. Life in Pattaya felt like the fresh start Pierce had been searching for. He'd wake up to Nitaya cooking breakfast, Thai food he'd learned to love. They'd spend afternoons at the beach or the mall. Evenings were quiet, domestic, comfortable. Pierce's pension and social security covered everything easily. Rent was $450, utilities maybe $80, food and entertainment another $600. He was giving Nitaya $375 monthly, and she'd send most of it to her family. He was still actually saving about $800 a month. His financial situation was more secure than it had been in Phoenix. The 15,000 baht Pierce gave Nitaya was nothing compared to what he'd spend back home, less than he'd pay in rent difference. A small price for happiness, for companionship, for not dying alone in an empty Phoenix house. After 6 months, though, Nitaya came to him with another emergency. Her father needed surgery, something with his leg, complications from a farming accident years ago. The hospital in Udon Thani wanted 180,000 baht. Pierce felt a flicker of concern. That was about $4,500, more than he'd planned to spend. But if he said no, what would Nitaya think? That he didn't care about her family? That he was cheap? She might leave, might realize she'd chosen the wrong man. He gave her the money. Looking back now, Pierce sees that was the moment, the test, and he failed it. That was when Nitaya learned he'd always say yes, when Pierce lost control of his own financial boundaries, when the relationship's power dynamics shifted irrevocably. By early 2005, they were talking about marriage. Pierce had been in Thailand for over a year, and he'd never been happier. Nitaya made him feel needed, valued, younger than his 68 years. Ploy called him Papa Pierce. He felt like he'd found his second chance at family. He proposed to her on the beach in Pattaya, with a modest ring he'd bought in Bangkok. She cried and said yes immediately, then called her mother right away, speaking rapid Thai, her voice high with excitement. Then came the wedding planning, and the sinsot. Nitaya's family wanted a traditional ceremony in their village. Pierce agreed, of course he did. This was her culture, her family. He wanted to do things right. Then her mother called, and Nitaya translated. The family wanted sinsot of 2.5 million baht. Pierce's stomach dropped. 2.5 million baht. That was over $60,000. That's a lot of money, Pierce managed. Nitya looked hurt. Is tradition. Show you can take care of me. Show respect to my family. But I'm already taking care of you. We're already living together. My family, they will be embarrassed if too small. Village will talk. They will think you not serious. They negotiated. Pierce stood firm at 800,000 baht, about $20,000. Nitya cried. Her mother called again, sounding disappointed through the phone. They eventually settled on 1 million baht, $25,000. Pierce paid it, telling himself this was normal. This was how things worked in Thailand. This was the price of admission to Nitya's family and culture. He'd paid for this, so he'd have earned respect, would be seen as a real husband, not just another foreign man taking advantage. That sinsot money could have been a house deposit back home, could have funded 3 years of comfortable retirement. Instead, it disappeared into Nitya's family's finances, never benefiting Pierce's marriage directly, never giving him the respect he'd thought he was buying. The wedding in June 2005 was overwhelming. The whole village showed up, hundreds of people Pierce had never met. It was hot, chaotic, and entirely in Thai. Pierce understood maybe 10% of what was happening during the elaborate ceremony with monks and rituals and endless formal speeches. The ceremony itself cost another 600,000 baht, about $15,000. Food for the village, traditional outfits, dowry gifts, monks, entertainment, flowers. Pierce paid for all of it. They registered the marriage officially at the district office, making it legal in both Thailand and the US. Pierce was now officially married to a Thai citizen, which meant visa extensions would be easier, which meant he was tied to Thailand even more deeply. At this point, Pierce had spent approximately $68,000 in less than 2 years. Initial help, $2,500 monthly allowances, 16 months. $375, $6,000 father's surgery. $4,500, sinsot. $25,000 wedding, $15,000. Extra requests and gifts, $15,000. Total, $68,000. He still had $482,000 left. His income was still covering their lifestyle comfortably, so he wasn't worried. This was all necessary investment in their future together, he told himself. They honeymooned in Koh Samui for a week, another $8,000. It should have been perfect, but Nitya spent most of the time on her phone, texting her family, checking Thai social media apps Pierce didn't use. Every expense felt like a negotiation. When they got back to Pattaya, things seemed to settle down. For a while, everything was exactly what Pierce had hoped for. Nitya cooked for him, was affectionate, made him feel wanted. Ploy thrived in a better school Pierce paid for. Pierce thought marriage would make things stable, would mean they'd stop spending so much, would give him the peace he'd been looking for. He was wrong. This was just the beginning. The first year of their marriage passed in a blur of domestic routines and gradual financial erosion. They were living in a modest house on the outskirts of Pattaya that they'd upgraded to after the wedding. Rent was 25,000 baht a month, about 625. It had 3 bedrooms, a small yard where Ploy could play, and enough space that Pierce could have his own office area. Their typical day was pleasant enough. They'd wake up late, eat out most meals because Nitya said she was tired from taking care of Ploy, go to the beach in the afternoons, spend evenings at home watching Thai TV that Pierce didn't understand. Pierce's monthly expenses now looked like this. Rent, 625, utilities, 150. Air conditioning running constantly in the heat. Food, $700. Eating out almost every meal added up. Nitya's allowance, $400, had increased from $375. Her family, $300. She said they needed it every month now. Ploy's school, $200 miscellaneous, $500, bars with Larry, entertainment, trips, shopping. Total $275. His income was $3,800, which meant he was still saving about $925 a month, or so he thought. Over the year, though, there were constant extras. And extras weren't counted in the monthly budget. One day, Nitya saw a bag she wanted at Central Festival, a designer purse she'd seen her friend carrying. It was 45,000 baht, about 1,125. Pierce hesitated, but she rarely asked for things for herself, and he wanted to make her happy. He bought it. Looking back, that phrase destroyed his life. It's only 1,125s. Because only 1,125 happened dozens of times, and dozens times 1,125 is $50,000. 3 months into the marriage, Nitaya's brother had a motorcycle accident. Hospital bills, they said. He needed 120,000 baht immediately, about $3,000. Nitaya cried, said they'd be embarrassed in the village if they couldn't help. Said Pierce was family now too. What kind of husband would he be if he refused? Pierce sent the money. This was part of being married to a Thai woman, he told himself. You take care of the whole family, not just your wife. This pattern repeated every few months. Always a different emergency. Always urgent. Always expensive. Her mother's medicine. Her sister's school fees. The village temple needed donations. Her aunt's funeral expenses. Each time, Nitaya would cry or look devastated, and Pierce would feel like a villain for even hesitating. By mid-2006, Nitaya had started spending more time with her friends, women she'd known from her previous work, though she was vague about where exactly they'd met. She'd go out 3 or 4 times a week, coming home late, always saying they'd been at someone's apartment or at a restaurant. Pierce noticed other changes too. She'd started spending more time on her phone. She'd angle it away when he walked by. She'd get calls late at night and take them in the other room, speaking low in Thai. Their sex life started declining. Once a week, then once every 2 weeks, then less. When Pierce asked who she was talking to, she'd say, my friend or my family, in a tone that suggested he was being paranoid. That questioning her was a sign of mistrust, that a good husband wouldn't interrogate his wife. Pierce let it go. What else could he do? Accuse her without proof? Push her away by seeming jealous or controlling? One afternoon at a bar, Larry pulled him aside. Listen, man, I don't want to overstep, but have you noticed Nitaya spending a lot of time with that group of girls? Her friends? Yes, why? Larry shifted uncomfortably. Just be careful. Some of those women, they're still working, if you know what I mean. Nitaya's not working. I give her money. I know. I'm just saying, keep your eyes open. Pierce told himself Larry was just being cynical, that not every Thai woman was a scammer, that Nitaya was different. Pierce was starting to feel trapped in a life that looked perfect from the outside, but felt increasingly hollow. He'd convinced himself this was normal, that all marriages had rough patches, that cultural differences meant different expectations, that he should be grateful for what he had instead of complaining. Most of his friends from back home had stopped calling. The time difference made it hard, and when they did talk, Pierce found himself glossing over details, making everything sound better than it was. He didn't have many close friends in Thailand either, Larry and a few other expats, but their relationships were superficial, based on drinking and complaining about Thailand rather than real connection. He felt alone even though he was married. By the end of 2006, Pierce realized he'd spent another $45,000 on top of the previous year's $68,000. Cumulative total, $513,000. He was down to $437,000 in savings. His investments were still generating decent returns, but he was dipping into principal more than he'd planned. Pierce was starting to worry about how long his money would last, doing math in the middle of the night, while Nitaya slept, or pretended to sleep beside him. Then Nitaya started talking about buying land in her village. We should build house, she said one evening. Why waste money on rent? We build nice house in my village, save money. Pierce felt his stomach tighten. This was when things went from bad to catastrophic. In early 2007, Nitaya's push for property became constant. She had it all planned out. Her family owned some land near the village. They'd sell Pierce a portion of it at a fair price, and then they'd build a beautiful house. She showed him pictures on her phone of other foreigners' houses in the area, spacious homes with high ceilings, modern bathrooms, gardens. We build 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. Cost maybe 3 million baht, she said. That was about $85,000. Pierce was immediately hesitant. Several problems were obvious even to him. I can't own land in Thailand, Pierce said. It would have to be in your name. Nitaya looked hurt. We married. Same. I your wife. I not run away. But what if something happens? You not trust me? Her eyes welled with tears. After everything, you think I bad person? That's not what I'm saying. Thai law say foreigner cannot own land. But okay, we together. We married. Why you worry? The amount worried him too. 3 million baht was a huge chunk of his savings, over 15% of what he had left. That's a lot of money, Nitaya. Back in America, a house cost much more. $500,000, yes? This only $85,000, very cheap. But we're fine renting. We pay 25,000 baht every month. That's 300,000 baht every year. Throw away money. If we build house, we save money. No more rent. The math made some sense, Pierce had to admit. 300,000 baht a year in rent. After 3 years, they'd have spent almost 1 million baht with nothing to show for it. At least with a house, they'd have an asset. Her mother called, and Nitaya put her on speakerphone even though Pierce couldn't understand the rapid Thai. After the call, Nitaya translated, though how accurately Pierce would never know. My mother say family embarrassed if we keep renting. People in village ask, why her husband not build house? He not have money? He not love her. The social pressure was constant. Nitaya's friends' husbands had already bought houses, bought cars, were taking care of their wives properly. Every gathering with other Thai foreigner couples, Pierce felt eyes on him, felt judged for being cheap, for not providing adequately. Other Farang do same thing, Nitaya insisted. Larry, he building house for Sam, yes? That was true. Larry had mentioned he was building a place in Sam's village, though he'd also said he was keeping enough money separate just in case, something Pierce filed away but didn't act on. Pierce started to convince himself. They could have their own space, build equity of sorts, have something to pass to ploy eventually. He'd visited Nitaya's village a few times. It was peaceful. The family was welcoming enough they could have a good life there if Pattaya got too expensive or too chaotic. The house would cost $85,000, less than a single year's rent in a comparable place in Phoenix. It was affordable, even if things didn't work out long term. And if the relationship ended, though he pushed that thought away immediately, he could figure something out. Pierce knew the legal reality. Foreigners can't own land in Thailand. He could own the structure, the house itself, but not the land it sat on, which meant if the relationship ended, he'd lose everything. She'd own it completely. He'd have zero legal protection. Larry had told him horror stories. Online forums were full of warnings. Other expats had lost houses, lost businesses, lost everything to Thai wives and girlfriends who'd played the long game. But Pierce did it anyway. He convinced himself they were different, that Nitaya wasn't like those other women, that she'd never betray him after everything he'd done for her, that his love and generosity would be enough. Looking back now, Pierce wants to go back in time and shake himself awake. This was the point of no return. Over the next 8 months, they went through the process. They bought the land from Nitaya's family, 500,000 baht, about $14,000 in her name. They hired contractors her cousin knew. They designed the house together. Pierce wanted it a certain way, but Nitaya kept insisting on changes, additions, upgrades. The original $85,000 estimate turned into $130,000. The contractors found problems with the land that needed fixing. Nitya wanted better materials. This house for long time we should do good quality. Her family suggested adding a spirit house, a proper wall around the property, a covered parking area, a larger kitchen. Every few weeks, Nitaya would come to him with another cost. They need another $200,000 baht for materials. The workers say they need bonus to finish on time. We have to pay for water and electricity. Connection, very expensive in village. When they went to sign papers, everything was in Thai. Pierce couldn't read any of it. The lawyer was Nitaya's cousin. Her family handled everything. Pierce wasn't included in conversations. They'd speak Thai the whole time, then turned to him expectantly while Nitaya said, "I'll sign here." He gave Nitaya money in stages, always in cash, which she said was normal in Thailand. The amounts kept changing. Money seemed to disappear into vague fees and taxes that Pierce never fully understood. Her uncle was the contractor. Her cousin was involved in sourcing materials. Her brother helped coordinate workers. Pierce thought, what if something goes wrong? they'll all side with her. But he didn't say anything, didn't want to insult her family, didn't want to seem like he didn't trust them. Once they'd committed to the project, Nitya seemed less interested in Pierce's opinions. She'd make decisions without asking him. When he questioned costs, she'd say Thai way dismissively, as if his concerns were irrelevant, as if this was her project and he was just the bank. By the time the house was finished in late 2007, Pierce had spent $140,000, $55,000 more than the original estimate. He was down to $297,000 in savings, barely half of what he'd started with just 4 years earlier. He'd pulled $80,000 out of investments to cover the construction costs, which meant his monthly income dropped from $3,800 to about $3,300, a loss of $500 per month that would compound over time. When the house was complete, Pierce felt a surge of pride despite everything. It was beautiful, spacious, modern, everything he'd imagined. Nitya seemed genuinely happy, posting photos on her Thai social media, showing off to her family and friends, acting like she'd won some kind of prize. This is it. Now we can settle down, Pierce thought. Now she'll be satisfied. This investment will pay off. This is our future secured. He was wrong. Within 3 months, Nitya started talking about buying a condo in Bangkok. We should have place in Bangkok, she said. Ploy getting older. She need good school. Bangkok school much better than Pattaya, much better than village. Pierce felt panic rising. Another property? They'd just built a house. We have the house in the village. Village boring. Ploy need opportunity, and Bangkok good investment. Condo price go up every year. The condo discussions revealed another layer to Nitya's thinking. She wanted status. She wanted her friends to see that her foreign husband wasn't just some cheap retiree, but someone substantial. Someone who could afford Bangkok property. Someone who treated her the way women in Thai soap operas were treated. Pierce resisted for months, but Nitya was relentless. She'd show him condos online. She'd talk about Ploy's education suffering. She'd mention that her friend's husband had bought a condo near Sukhumvit, implying Pierce was falling behind. By mid-2008, exhausted from the constant pressure and from trying to make Nitya happy, Pierce agreed to look at condos. They found one in a decent building near a BTS station, 1.5 million baht, about $45,000. Smaller than the house, just a 2-bedroom, but modern and in a good location. Nitya signed the papers. Pierce wired the money. Just like that, another $45,000 gone. Cumulative spending by end of 2008, $185,000. House plus condo plus ongoing expenses. Pierce had $252,000 left. His monthly income was down to $3,300, but their expenses had increased because now they were maintaining 2 properties, traveling between Pattaya and Bangkok regularly. Paying for Ploy's expensive Bangkok private school, Pierce was losing about $500 a month now, not saving anything, just watching his nest egg shrink. But he told himself this was temporary, that property was an investment, that they'd be fine. The house and condo became money pits almost immediately. Maintenance cost more than planned. The condo had high monthly fees. Nitya's family now expected even more from Pierce. After all, he'd built a house and bought a condo, so clearly he had money. Her mother needed medicine again. Her brother's motorcycle broke down. The village temple needed a new roof. Her sister wanted to go to technical school in Udon Thani. Pierce couldn't say no without Nitya crying, without feeling like he was failing as a husband, without hearing, "You not love my family?" in Nitya's hurt voice. By 2009, 6 years into their relationship, Pierce had spent $240,000, half of his life savings gone. From 2009 to 2015, Pierce's life became a slow financial and emotional death. The house in the village needed constant repairs. The roof leaked during rainy season. They had to replace tiles every year. The paint peeled in the intense heat. Termites destroyed wooden structures. Air conditioning units kept breaking. The well pump failed twice. Nitya's family treated the house like a hotel. Her mother would visit for weeks at a time, bringing other relatives. They'd use utilities freely, expect Pierce to pay for their food, damage things carelessly. When Pierce suggested setting boundaries, Nitya got defensive. "You want my family not welcome in our house?" Between repairs, utilities, maintenance, and Nitaya's family using everything, the house that was supposed to save money was costing about $600 a month, more than their old rent in Pattaya. The Bangkok condo wasn't much better. The building had high maintenance fees. Furniture broke faster than expected. Ploy's private school was bleeding them dry. Tuition, uniforms, activities, tutoring. They were spending $800 a month just on Ploy's education. Nitaya had started spending more time in Bangkok, saying Ploy needed her mother there for school. Pierce would stay in Pattaya or the village, visiting Bangkok every few weeks. The separation created new distance between them. Their relationship had changed fundamentally. Nitaya was distant, often irritable. Their sex life had declined to almost nothing, maybe once every few months, and even then it felt obligatory on her part. She'd spend hours on her phone, would leave rooms to take calls, would be evasive about who she was talking to. When Pierce tried to discuss money, tried to suggest they needed to cut back, Nitaya would get angry. "We have good life. Why you worry? You have money. I had money. We've spent a lot. Everything I ask for, it's for family. You want me to tell my mother she can't have medicine? You want Ploy to have bad education?" The guilt worked every time. Pierce would back down, would write another check, would tell himself this was temporary. Nitaya's family's demands escalated year after year. Every few months brought a new emergency. 2009. Her father needed dental work, $2,500. Her sister's wedding, $4,000 in contributions. 2010. The family's rice farm needed new equipment, $8,000. Her brother wanted to start a motorcycle taxi business, $3,000 for the bike. 2011. Her mother had a heart problem, $6,000 for tests and medicine. The village needed to rebuild a communal building, $2,000 expected from Pierce as a major donor. 2012, her niece needed surgery, $5,000. The family home needed repairs, $7,000. 2013, her father's funeral. He died of complications from diabetes, $8,000 for an elaborate ceremony. 2014, her mother wanted to build a small shop, $12,000. Her sister lost her job and needed support, $500 a month for 6 months. 2015. The village temple held a major festival, $5,000 in donations expected from Pierce as a senior village member. Pierce started noticing patterns. The emergencies were never-ending. Money he sent never seemed to fix anything permanently. The same problems kept resurfacing. Different relatives, same stories. Over 7 years, 2009-2015, Pierce sent Nitaya's family approximately $80,000, an average of over $950 a month, more than his original rent in Pattaya, more than he spent on himself. During these years, Nitaya changed. The shy, grateful young woman he'd met in 2004 had become someone else, harder, more demanding, always dissatisfied. She'd complained that Pierce was cheap compared to other foreign husbands. She'd mentioned friends whose husbands had bought them cars, had given them more money, had treated them better. Pierce, now in his mid-70s, felt increasingly powerless. He'd spent 12 years building this life, invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, raised Ploy as his own daughter. How could he walk away from all of that? The sunk cost fallacy held him prisoner. He'd invested too much to quit now, come too far to walk away, put his entire future into this relationship. Admitting it was a mistake would mean admitting he'd wasted over a decade and most of his money on nothing. He kept telling himself, things will get better. She's just stressed. This is temporary. We've been through worse. I just need to be patient. His friends from Phoenix had stopped calling years ago. Pierce had been vague about his life, and the distance made maintaining friendships impossible. His daughters, Sarah and Jennifer, had grown estranged. They disapproved of his marriage to a much younger Thai woman, felt he'd chosen Nitaya over them, resented that their potential inheritance was disappearing into Thailand. When Jennifer visited in 2011, she pulled Pierce aside. "Dad, are you sure about all this? The money you're spending? Have you thought about what happens when you run out?" "I'm not running out. I have enough saved." "You had $550,000. How much is left?" Pierce didn't answer. He didn't want to admit he was down to about $180,000, that he'd spent $370,000 in 8 years, that his monthly income barely covered expenses now. Jennifer left Thailand angry, feeling like she'd lost her father to a woman she didn't trust. By 2015, Pierce was 79 years old. He'd spent $420,000 of his original $550,000. He had $130,000 left, barely 23% of what he'd started with. His monthly income was down to $3,100 after he'd been forced to liquidate more investments. Their monthly expenses were around $3,000, leaving almost no buffer. Pierce did math constantly, obsessively. At his current burn rate, his money would last maybe another 4 or 5 years. Then what? He'd be in his mid-80s, broke, dependent on just his military pension and Social Security, which wouldn't cover their lifestyle. He felt trapped. He couldn't leave because everything was in Nitaya's name. The house worth $140,000, the condo worth $45,000, all of it legally hers. If he left, he'd walk away with nothing except his remaining savings. He couldn't afford to divorce her. Thai law wouldn't give him any property, and he might even have to pay her support. He couldn't force a sale or reclaim anything. He was stuck in Thailand in this marriage, in a life that felt like a slow-motion catastrophe he couldn't escape. Nitaya seemed to sense his helplessness. She became more demanding, less affectionate, increasingly contemptuous. She'd speak to him dismissively, would spend days in Bangkok without explanation, would make major decisions without consulting him. Their relationship had become transactional at best, hostile at worst. They lived in the same spaces but had separate lives. Pierce felt like a tenant in houses he'd paid for, an ATM for a family that barely tolerated him, a convenience rather than a loved husband. Larry noticed. "Man, you don't look good. Everything okay?" Pierce wanted to confide in him but was too ashamed. "Fine, just getting old. You ever think about leaving? Getting out of here?" "Where would I go?" That was the reality. At 79 with $130,000 left, no home in America, and adult daughters who barely spoke to him, Pierce had no good options. He'd burned his bridges, spent his nest egg, and locked himself into a situation with no exit. He felt like he was just waiting. Waiting for the money to run out, waiting for his health to fail, waiting for some external force to end this situation, because he couldn't end it himself. He kept telling himself, maybe things will change. Maybe Nitaya will appreciate me again. Maybe the money will stretch further than I think. Maybe I'll die before it becomes a real problem. Then, in early 2016, something happened that confirmed every fear Pierce had been suppressing for years. It was a humid afternoon in March 2016. Pierce was sitting in the village house. Nitaya was supposedly in Bangkok with Ploy for school when Larry called. "Pierce, are you home? I need to come by." Larry's voice sounded strange, serious. Larry was usually joking, light, never serious. "Sure, is everything okay? I'll be there in an hour." When Larry arrived, he looked uncomfortable, like he was carrying bad news he didn't want to deliver. "What's going on?" Pierce asked. Larry pulled out his phone, hesitated, then said, "I was in Udon Thani yesterday, visiting Sam's family. And I saw Nitaya." Pierce's stomach tightened. "So? Her village is near there. She was with someone. A Thai guy. They were at a restaurant and they were close, really close." "Close how?" Larry showed Pierce photos on his phone. Nitaya sitting at a table with a Thai man about her age, maybe 35, 36. Their hands were touching on the table. In another photo, they were walking together, his arm around her waist. In a third photo, she was laughing, leaning into him, looking at him the way she'd looked at Pierce years ago. Pierce felt like he'd been punched in the gut. His hands started shaking. "Maybe it's just a friend." "I asked around," Larry said quietly. "People in the village know him. His name's Somchai. They say he's her boyfriend. They say he's been around for years. Years." Pierce couldn't breathe. "Years? That's not possible. We've been married for 11 years. I'm just telling you what I heard. So I thought you should know." After Larry left, Pierce sat alone for hours, staring at the photos on his own phone. Larry had sent them to him. The images burned into his mind. Nitaya touching this man, Nitaya laughing with him, Nitaya being affectionate in a way she hadn't been with Pierce in half a decade. He called Nitaya. She answered on the fourth ring, sounding annoyed. "What? I'm busy. I need you to come to the village. I'm in Bangkok. Ploy has school." "Now, come now." Something in his voice must have conveyed the seriousness. Okay, tomorrow. That night, Pierce couldn't sleep. His mind replayed every moment of their relationship, reframing everything he thought he knew. That time the old man had approached her at the market in 2005, had spoken to her in Thai, and she'd quickly dismissed him. Pierce had assumed it was someone from her past work. Had it been Somchai? Had he existed even then? The emergencies that required her to visit the village alone for days or weeks at a time, had she been staying with him? The phone calls she'd taken private, the secretive behavior with her phone. Had she been coordinating with him? Her increasingly cold demeanor, the decline in their intimacy, her constant dissatisfaction, had it been because she was comparing Pierce to someone else, to someone she actually wanted? When Nitaya arrived the next afternoon, Pierce was waiting with the photos pulled up on his tablet. "Sit down," he said. She looked wary. "Why? What's wrong?" He turned the tablet toward her, showing the restaurant photo. Her face went pale, then defensive. "Who took this? Who's spying on me?" "It doesn't matter." "Who is he?" He's just a friend. From village. Don't lie to me." Pierce's voice was shaking. "I know. People in the village told my friend. His name's Somchai. He's your boyfriend." Nitaya's face changed. The fear and defensiveness melted into something harder, colder. "Okay," she said simply. Pierce felt like the floor had disappeared beneath him. "Okay, that's all you have to say." "What you want me to say?" "Yes, I know him. Yes, we... together sometimes. How long?" She shrugged. "Long time." "How long, Nitaya?" Since before we married." The words hit like physical blows. Since before we married. The whole time. 11 years of marriage. 13 years of knowing her. And she'd been with someone else the entire time. "Did you ever love me?" Pierce heard himself asking, hating how pathetic he sounded. Nitaya looked away. "Maybe at first. Little bit. But you were older. You were safe. You had money. So I was just..." "What, a bank? I need to take care of my family. My daughter. You understand?" No, I don't understand." "I gave you everything. I built you a house. I bought you a condo. I gave your family hundreds of thousands of dollars. I raised Ploy like she was my own. Yes, and I stay with you. I cook for you. I live with you. This is trade, yes?" Pierce felt sick. A trade? Our marriage was a business transaction? "What you think?" "You think I love old man?" She said it so matter-of-factly, so casually cruel. "You were kind. You gave money. I gave you the companion, family. This is how it works. What about Somchai? You love him?" Her face softened slightly. "Yes, I love him. And the money I gave you, some go to my family. Some go to him. He need help too." Pierce did the mental math. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. The house money. How much had actually gone to construction versus to Somchai? The emergencies. How many had been real versus excuses to send money to her boyfriend? The allowance he'd given her monthly for years. Had she been supporting 2 households? "Does your family know?" "Of course they know. Everyone in village knows. Only you don't know." That realization was almost worse than the affair itself. Her entire family, the people he'd given tens of thousands of dollars to, the people who'd smiled at him at the wedding, who'd called him family, they'd all known. They'd all been in on it. He'd been the fool, the walking ATM, the only one who didn't know what everyone else knew. "Why did you marry me if you were with him?" "He cannot give me money like you." He have no money. You American, you have pension, you have savings. You can give good life to me and Ploy. So you used me." She stood up. "I going back to Bangkok. We're not done talking, we done. You know now. What else to say?" "I want a divorce." Nitaya laughed, actually laughed. "Okay, you divorce me. But house is my name. Condo is my name. You get nothing. You leave with your money. I keep everything else." She was right. He knew she was right. Under Thai law, he had no claim to the properties in her name. Marriage didn't change ownership. He could divorce her, but he'd walk away with nothing except his remaining savings. "After everything I did for you, you did for you," she said. "You lonely. You wanted Thai wife. I give you that. You paid for it." She left. Pierce sat alone in the house he'd built with his money. in the village where everyone had known he was a fool and felt his entire life collapse around him. At 80 years old, with maybe $125,000 left in savings, Pierce had to decide what to do next. He could stay in Thailand, stay married to Nitaya, continue this humiliating existence where he paid rent on his own life, while she maintained a separate life with the man she actually loved. Or he could leave, walk away from the $185,000 in properties he'd bought, from the 13 years he'd invested, from Ploy, who he realized was probably closer to Somchai than to him, and try to start over somewhere else at 80 years old. Both options felt like defeat, but staying felt like death. The week after the confrontation was surreal. Nitaya stayed in Bangkok. Pierce stayed in the village house alone, spiraling. He started going through everything with new eyes, looking for evidence he'd been too blind to see before. He found receipts from hotels in Udon Thani, dates when Nitaya had said she was visiting her sick mother. He found messages in her old phone she'd left behind, messages in Thai he had to get someone to translate, messages between her and Somchai from 2009 talking about the Faranga to Pierce and how much longer they could keep this going. One message in particular killed him. From 2013, Somchai to Nitaya, "Does he suspect anything?" Nitaya's response, "No, he is too stupid. He believes everything." Pierce had friends translate more messages. The picture became brutally clear. The emergencies her family had were mostly real, but the amounts were inflated. She'd asked Pierce for $5,000, send her family $2,000, keep $3,000. Sometimes the emergencies weren't real at all, just convenient excuses to get money from Pierce that she'd then use elsewhere. The house construction had cost maybe $95,000 in real costs. The other $45,000 had disappeared into her accounts, some of which had funded improvements to land Somchai's family owned. Her trips to the village weren't just family visits. She'd spend days with Somchai in a small house his family owned on the outskirts of her village. Everyone knew. Her family knew. Her friends knew. The village knew. Only Pierce, the foreigner who didn't speak Thai, who believed what he was told, who trusted his wife, didn't know. Pierce felt a rage he'd never experienced before, but it was mixed with a crushing sense of his own stupidity. How had he not seen it? The signs had been there from the beginning. That old man who'd approached her in 2005, and she'd quickly dismissed, definitely connected to Somchai, maybe a relative warning her that Pierce was watching. Her insistence on keeping her phone private, on taking calls in other rooms, coordinating with Somchai. Her friends acting uncomfortable around Pierce. They'd known she was playing him. The decline in their intimacy, she was getting affection elsewhere and just tolerated Pierce for the money. Her increasing demands for more property, more things. She was building a future with Somchai using Pierce's money. Larry had tried to warn him years ago. Just have fun, don't get serious. Pierce had ignored him. Jennifer had tried to warn him. Dad, are you sure about this? Pierce had been defensive. Other expats had shared their horror stories, and Pierce had thought, but we're different. They weren't different. He was just another statistic. Pierce called a Thai lawyer to discuss options. The consultation was depressing. Everything is in her name? The lawyer asked. Yes, the house, the condo. And you want these properties back in a divorce? Yes. The lawyer shook his head. Very difficult. Under Thai law, property in her name is hers. Marriage does not change ownership. If you divorce, she keeps everything legally, even though I paid for it. Do you have receipts? Contracts. Proof that you paid. Some receipts. But mostly I gave her cash. She said that was normal here. Without documentation, very difficult to prove. Even with documentation, Thai courts usually favor Thai nationals in property disputes. So I have no legal rights to property I bought. You bought property in her name. Legally, it is hers. What about the money I gave her family? The support I provided? Gifts, not recoverable. What if I could prove she was having an affair? Affair is not criminal in Thailand. Would not affect property division. You might argue for fault-based divorce, but it would not change that property and her name is hers. Pierce left the consultation feeling hopeless. The legal system offered him no protection, no recourse. He'd signed everything away by putting it in Nitaya's name, and Thai law would not give him any of it back. He sat down and calculated the complete damage. Year-by-year breakdown, 2003-2004. Initial help, $2,500 monthly allowances, $6,000 emergency requests, $8,500 total, $17,000, 2005. Sinsot, $25,000. Wedding, $15,000. Honeymoon, $8,000 extras, $12,000. Total, $60,000, 2006. Monthly allowances, $4,800 family emergencies, $15,000 gifts. And extras, $18,000 total, $37,800, 2007, 2008. Village house, $140,000 Bangkok condo, $45,000 ongoing expenses, $28,000 total, $213,000 2009, 2015, 7 years. Monthly allowances, 7 years, x $4,800 year, $33,600. Family emergencies, $80,000 property. Maintenance, 7 years x 7,200 euros year, 50,400 extras and MISC, $35,000. Total, $199,000 2016, partial year before leaving. Ongoing, 8,200 grand total, $535,000, includes interest lost from liquidating investments. Remaining, about $15,000, accounting. For some remaining investments liquidated for departure. Pierce had started with $550,000. After 13 years with Nitaya, he had $15,000 left. He'd spent $535,000 on a relationship that had been a lie from the beginning. At 80 years old, Pierce had $15,000 in liquid savings. No property, all in Nitaya's name. A military pension of about $2,100 month Social Security, of about $1,400 month total monthly income. $3,500. He couldn't afford to live in Thailand anymore, not with the lifestyle he'd established, not with Nitaya expecting continued support. He couldn't afford Bangkok or Pattaya rent. He couldn't afford to maintain the 2 properties he'd bought. He could technically stay married and live in the village house, but that meant staying married to a woman who was openly with another. And staying in a village where everyone pitied or mocked him. Staying in a situation that was killing him emotionally. So he could divorce Nitaya, walk away from the properties and leave Thailand entirely. But where would he go? Back to Phoenix, where he had no home, where his daughters barely spoke to him, where he'd have to explain that he'd wasted his retirement, savings on a scam marriage? Back to the US, where $15,000 and $3,500 a month wouldn't last long? He looked into the Philippines, where he probably should have gone in the first place. Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia. Places where $3,500 a month might be enough to survive modestly. Cambodia seemed like the only real option. Sihanoukville had a small expat community, and the cost of living was even lower than Thailand. He could rent a basic place for $200-300 a month, live frugally, maybe stretch his remaining money. It wasn't the retirement he'd imagined. It was survival. Pierce spent those weeks in a dark depression. He'd lost weight. He couldn't sleep. He'd sit in the village house he'd built, this monument to his stupidity, and wonder how he'd let this happen. He thought about his late wife, Margaret. She'd been a good woman, a genuine partner. They'd had real love, real companionship, and he'd dishonored her memory by falling for someone who saw him as nothing more than a wallet. He thought about his daughters, who'd tried to warn him, who he'd pushed away because he'd been too proud to admit they might be right. He thought about all the red flags he'd ignored, all the warning signs he'd rationalized away, all the times his gut told him something was wrong, but he'd told himself he was being paranoid. He thought about Somchai, living a life subsidized by Pierce's money, probably laughing about the stupid American who'd paid for everything, while Somchai got the woman Pierce thought was his wife. Most painfully, he thought about all the years he'd wasted. From 67 to 80, years when he could have been traveling, pursuing hobbies, building genuine friendships, maybe finding real companionship with someone age-appropriate who valued him as a person. Instead, he'd spent those years in a transaction disguised as a marriage, in a country that gave him no legal protection, with people who saw him as an ATM to be drained until empty. In May 2016, Pierce made his decision. He would leave Thailand. He would walk away from the house and condo, $185,000 of his money legally belonging to Nitaya. He would take his remaining $15,000, cross the border to Cambodia, and try to survive on his pension for however many years he had left. He called Nitaya. "I'm leaving. I'll sign the divorce papers if you prepare them, or we can stay legally married. I don't care, but I'm done. Okay, she said, sounding almost bored. You want to meet one more time? No. Okay. Good luck. That was it. 13 years, $535,000, and all he got was good luck. Pierce packed what he could fit in 2 suitcases, sold or gave away everything else, and took a bus to the Cambodian border. The bus ride from Udon Thani to the Cambodia border took 8 hours. Pierce sat in a cramped seat, watching rural Thailand pass by outside the window. The same landscape that had seemed exotic and beautiful in 2003 now just looked like the site of his failure. He thought about what he was leaving behind. The house in the village, 3 bedrooms, modern bathrooms, the garden he'd imagined sitting in during peaceful retirement mornings, $140,000, Nitaya's now, legally and permanently. The Bangkok condo, the place he'd bought so Ploy could have a good education, so Nitaya could be comfortable in the city. $45,000, also Nitaya's. Ploy, the girl he'd raised from age 4 to 16, who he'd paid school fees for, who he'd taken to parks and bought ice cream for, who called him Papa Pierce. Not biologically his, and with him leaving, probably would forget him within a year or 2. How much had he spent on her over 12 years? Probably $60,000 in school fees, clothes, food, activities. All of it gone. At the border, Pierce crossed into Cambodia with his 2 suitcases and $15,000 in cash. A Thai border official stamped his passport without looking at him. No one asked why an 80-year-old American was leaving Thailand for Cambodia. No one cared. Sihanoukville was a chaotic coastal city, more run down than Pattaya, but also cheaper and quieter. Pierce found a studio apartment for $200 a month in a building that housed mostly poor Cambodian families and a handful of other foreign retirees who looked as defeated as he felt. The apartment was basic: 1 room with a bed, a small table, a hot plate for cooking, a bathroom with a squat toilet and a shower that was just a hose attached to the wall. No air conditioning, just a fan. The walls were concrete blocks, unpainted. The window looked out on an alley where trash accumulated. This was his life now. Pierce set up a strict budget: monthly income, $3,500 monthly expenses, rent, $200 utilities, $30 of food, $300 and miss, $100 total spending, $630 monthly savings, $2,870. If he could stick to that budget, he'd be okay. He'd even rebuild savings. In 5 years, he'd have almost $175,000 saved. The problem was that this budget required living at bare subsistence. No restaurants, no entertainment, no travel, no emergencies, no health problems. And at 80, health problems were inevitable. Within the first year in Cambodia, Pierce had a health scare. Chest pains that turned out to be severe indigestion, but required a hospital visit that cost $800. There went most of his emergency fund. His teeth needed work, were $200 for extractions and a partial denture. He developed high blood pressure. Medication cost $80 a month, increasing his budget. By the end of 2016, his remaining savings were down to $11,000. He'd saved very little because unexpected expenses kept eroding his buffer. The isolation was crushing. Pierce had a few conversations with other expats at a local coffee shop sometimes, but these were superficial, complaining about Cambodia, about their situations, about how they'd ended up there. No one wanted to hear Pierce's full story, and he didn't want to tell it. He tried to reconnect with his daughters via email. Jennifer responded once coldly, "I'm glad you're safe. Please don't ask us for money." Sarah didn't respond at all. Pierce spent most of his time alone in his studio apartment. He'd read books from a small English bookstore. He'd walk around the city aimlessly. He'd sit on the beach sometimes, watching the ocean, thinking about how different his life had turned out from what he'd imagined. He thought a lot about the choices he'd made. The choice to go to Thailand instead of the Philippines. Would an English-speaking country with stronger property protections have changed things? Maybe, maybe not. The choice to pursue Nitaya after that first meal. If he'd just walked away, thanked her for the service and never returned, he'd still have his money. The choice to give her that first $2,500. That was the test he failed. The moment he showed her he'd say yes, the moment the dynamic was established. The choice to ignore the red flags, the old man approaching her, the phone secrecy, Larry's warnings, his own instincts. The choice to put property in her name. He'd known the legal reality, had heard the horror stories and done it anyway. The choice to believe age didn't matter, that she loved him despite being 45 years older, that their relationship was special and different from all the other similar relationships that ended badly. The choice to prioritize her happiness over his own financial security. Every choice had seemed reasonable at the time, or at least justifiable. But in aggregate, they'd destroyed his retirement, his family relationships, his dignity, his future. The worst part was the self-knowledge that he'd done this to himself. Nitaya had scammed him, yes, but he'd been a willing participant in his own destruction. He'd ignored evidence, rationalized away concerns, and kept giving money even when every rational part of his brain was screaming at him to stop. He'd been lonely, and he'd paid $535,000 for 13 years of company from someone who never actually loved him. By 2018, Pierce was 82. He'd managed to stabilize financially. He had about $18,000 in savings after rebuilding slowly, but his health was declining. His blood pressure medication had increased. He had arthritis in his knees. His vision was deteriorating. He knew with a cold certainty that he'd die in this studio apartment in Sihanoukville, probably alone, probably without much dignity. Sometimes he'd do the math for his daughters. If he died tomorrow, they'd inherit maybe $20,000 after funeral expenses from an estate that had been worth over $500,000. He'd stolen their inheritance to fund a fake marriage. Sometimes he'd think about Thailand, about Nitaya. Was she still with Somchai? Had they moved into the house Pierce built? Was Ploy doing well in school? Did any of them ever think about him? Probably not. He'd served his purpose. He'd been the ATM that funded their life for 13 years. Now that the money was gone, why would they think about him? Pierce tried to find meaning in his situation. He told himself maybe his story could help others. Maybe sharing what happened to him would prevent another lonely retiree from making the same mistakes. He started writing down his story in notebooks, thinking maybe he could publish it somewhere, turn his disaster into a warning. That story eventually found its way online, shared in expat forums, posted on YouTube, discussed in retirement planning communities. Here's what not to do, people would say. Sharing Pierce's cautionary tale. At least his failure had that value. It might save someone else. But that was cold comfort when Pierce sat alone in his studio apartment at 3 a.m., unable to sleep, doing math about whether his money would last until he died, wondering if he'd end up a burden on his daughters, despite having had more than $500,000 just 15 years earlier. He'd spent $535,000 learning lessons he should have known before spending a single dollar. Love can't be bought. Age gaps that large are never about love. Trust your instincts. Protect your financial security above all else. If something seems too good to be true, it is. These lessons had cost him everything. By 2020, Pierce was 84 years old. Then COVID-19 hit. Cambodia went into lockdown. The small businesses that catered to expats closed. The coffee shop where Pierce occasionally socialized shut down permanently. The borders closed, making even the idea of leaving impossible. Pierce's military pension and social security continued, but he was completely isolated. No social contact. Deliveries of food were unreliable. The hospital system was overwhelmed, and as a foreigner, Pierce knew he'd be low priority if he got seriously ill. He spent months alone in his studio apartment, watching the world collapse on a small laptop he'd bought years ago. He'd see news from America, his daughters posting on Facebook about their lives, their families, their worries. They never mentioned him. He was a ghost in their lives. During one of the worst stretches of lockdown in August 2020, Pierce got sick. High fever, difficulty breathing, weakness. Probably COVID, though he never got tested. The testing centers were overwhelmed and getting there would have been impossible anyway. He rode it out alone in his apartment, feverish and delirious for a week, genuinely thinking he might die there and no one would find him for days. He survived. But barely. When Cambodia started reopening in late 2021, Pierce emerged into a world that felt different. Sihanoukville had changed. More Chinese development, fewer Western expats, higher costs. His carefully balanced budget was stressed by inflation. By 2023, Pierce was 87, the age he is now as he tells this story. His savings are down to $35,000 despite years of careful budgeting. Medical expenses keep eating away at the buffer. His blood pressure medication has increased again. He needs reading glasses he can barely afford. His teeth need more work he's delaying. He's spending about $900 a month now. Rent increased to $250. Food costs more due to inflation. Medication costs $120 a month. Miscellaneous expenses he can't avoid. His monthly income is $3,500, so he's still saving about $2,600 a month. If nothing changes, if he has no major medical emergencies, if inflation doesn't accelerate, his money might last until he's 95 or so. But Pierce knows that's optimistic. At 87, the chances of a major health issue are high. One hospital stay could wipe out his remaining savings. One fall, one stroke, one serious illness, and he'd be destitute, dependent on whatever minimal care Cambodia provides to indigent foreigners. Pierce's daily life is profoundly lonely. He wakes up around 8 a.m. in his studio apartment. The gecko on his ceiling has become a kind of companion. He's named it Gary and talks to it sometimes. He makes instant coffee on his hot plate. He eats rice and eggs for breakfast, the same meal he's eaten almost every day for years because it's cheap and filling. He reads if his eyes aren't too tired. He takes a walk around the neighborhood, moving slowly because of his arthritis. He avoids the beach now. Seeing couples and families enjoying vacations is too depressing. He eats rice and vegetables for lunch and dinner, occasionally stretching his budget for chicken or fish. He watches the sunset from his window, not because it's beautiful, but because it marks another day survived, another day closer to whatever end awaits him. He goes to sleep early, often around 8 p.m., partly to save on electricity. His fan costs money to run, partly because there's nothing else to do. This is his life now, survival, waiting, existing but not living. What Thailand took from him: financial, his savings, $535,000 spent. His security went from wealthy retiree to barely surviving his future. No legacy to leave, no comfortable final years, his daughter's inheritance stolen to fund a fake relationship. Emotional. His dignity became the fool everyone pitied. His trust will never believe or trust again. His ability to love destroyed by betrayal. His peace, anxiety about money dominates everyday social. His relationship with his daughters destroyed. His friendships lost or abandoned. His connection to his home country severed his sense of belonging. Everywhere he's an outsider now. Time 20 years from age 67 to 87. The final good years of his life. Time he could have spent with real family, real friends, time he'll never get back. What Thailand gave him? Lessons he didn't want to learn. People can smile while destroying you. Love can't be bought, no matter the price. Desperation makes you blind to obvious lies. Sunk cost fallacy will trap you in hell. Legal systems protect citizens over foreigners. Beauty and youth aren't real when purchased. Age gaps that large are always transactional. Family emergencies are infinite when you always pay. Your Western money makes you a target, not special. You can spend everything and get nothing. Pierce sits in his studio apartment in Sihanoukville, Cambodia, at 87 years old. Pierce wanted to believe he was special, that his personality made up for age, that she saw past appearances. He ignored biology and common sense. Ask yourself, would she be with you if you had no money? Would she choose you over a Thai man her age, if both had the same income? Does she introduce you to her friends proudly or hide you? Is she affectionate in public or embarrassed? If she calls you handsome man but won't be seen with you in public, you're an ATM, not a boyfriend. Lesson number 3. The family emergencies never stop. Her mother needed medicine. Her father needed surgery. Her brother needed a motorcycle. Her sister needed school fees. Her family needed temple donations, funeral expenses, wedding contributions, house repairs. It became monthly, then constant. Half the emergencies weren't real. The ones that were real weren't Pierce's responsibility. Her family saw him as an ATM they could access through her. There was no gratitude, only expectation of more. Boundaries. Say no to the first request, set the precedent. Give a fixed monthly amount and nothing extra ever. If she can't accept that, she's not the one. Her family's financial problems are not your responsibility. Pierce sent $80,000 to her family over 13 years. He never saw a single baht benefit their relationship. Lesson number 4. Sinsot is extortion disguised as tradition. They'll tell you it's tradition, showing respect, proving you can take care of her. It's a foreigner tax, a way to extract maximum money at the start. Nitya's family wanted $60,000. Pierce negotiated down to $25,000. He thought he'd won. He lost. He paid anything at all. Thai men don't always pay sinsot to Thai women. It's often returned after the ceremony. For foreigners, it rarely is. You're being treated differently because you're foreign. Acknowledge that. Refuse to pay it. Offer a small gift instead. If she insists, major red flag. No genuine relationship should require buying into it. Pierce's $25,000 went straight to her family and was never seen again. Lesson number 5. The red flags were there. He ignored them all. She kept seeing people from her past. Pierce ignored it. Her family acted uncomfortable. He ignored it. She was secretive with her phone. He ignored it. Money requests escalated. He ignored it. Friends tried to warn him. He ignored it. Why did Pierce ignore them? He didn't want to see the truth. He was too invested to back out. He told himself he was being paranoid. He wanted to believe so badly. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. One red flag might be nothing. Multiple are a pattern. Don't ignore warnings from others. Don't rationalize away behavior that makes you uncomfortable. Your gut knows before your brain admits it. Listen. Lesson number 6. Thailand is not your friend. This isn't about Thai people as individuals. Some are wonderful. This is about how foreigners are treated legally, the cultural acceptance of extracting from outsiders, the lack of legal protection, the way laws favor Thais in every dispute. Realities: you can't own land ever. Business maximum 49%. You never have control. Marriage doesn't grant property rights like Western countries. Courts heavily favor Thai nationals. Police won't help you in domestic disputes. You'll always be Farang, always an outsider. Go to Thailand to visit, not to build a life. Never put your financial security in a country where you have no legal rights. Always maintain an exit strategy. Keep money in your home country. Don't burn bridges back home. After 13 years, Pierce still wasn't home. He was a tolerated guest who paid rent on an entire life. Lesson number 7. Don't sacrifice your security for anyone. Pierce gave up his retirement, his savings, his future for someone who never loved him, for a relationship that was fake from the start. If Pierce hadn't gone to Thailand, if he'd kept his money invested, he'd have over $800,000 now. If he'd stayed in Phoenix, he'd be retired comfortably, financially secure, living well with family nearby. Instead, he has $35,000, a studio apartment in Cambodia, declining health, no family connections, and crushing regret. No woman, Thai or otherwise, is worth your entire future. Love shouldn't cost you everything you've worked for. If she truly loves you, she won't demand you sacrifice your security. Your number 1 priority must be your own financial safety. Harsh truth: you can't save her from poverty by joining her in it. All you do is make 2 people poor instead of 1. These 7 lessons cost Pierce $535,000 and 20 years to learn. He's giving them to you for free. Maybe, just maybe, someone will listen. Maybe his story will save one person. Maybe this wasn't all for nothing. If you're watching this, you're probably thinking about moving to Thailand, or you're already there and things aren't feeling right, or you're in love with a woman 30 years younger and wondering if it's real. Don't do what Pierce did. Please don't put property in her name. Don't believe the "we're different" lie. Don't ignore red flags because you're in love. Don't sacrifice your retirement. Don't trust someone you met in a bar or massage parlor. Don't think age gap doesn't matter, because you'll end up like Pierce, 87 years old, broke, alone, working when you should be comfortably retired, full of regret, unable to fix what you've broken. What you should do instead: if considering Thailand, visit Thailand. Don't move there permanently. Keep your money in your home country. Rent, never buy. Set a monthly budget and stick to it religiously. Assume every woman you meet working in bars, massages, working because she has maintained strong connections to your home country. Never give more than you can afford to lose, completely if already in Thailand. If you've put property in her name, you've probably already lost it. Start planning exit. If family emergencies are constant, you're being scammed. Set hard boundaries immediately. If she's secretive or distant, investigate now before spending more. If friends are warning you, listen to them. They see what you don't want to see. Set a maximum total amount you'll spend and stick to it. Keep at least 50% of your assets completely separate and inaccessible to her general life principles. Your financial security comes first. Before any relationship, age gaps over 20 years are transactions, not romance. If you're paying for affection, you're not receiving love. Cultural differences don't excuse financial abuse. Your instincts are usually right. Trust them. Sunk cost fallacy will trap you. Past spending isn't a reason to spend more. It's never too late to leave. A bad situation. For those thinking, but my situation is different. It's not. Pierce thought his situation was different. Every man in his position thinks he's the exception. The bar girl who genuinely falls for the 65-year-old foreigner exists in the same probability as winning the lottery. Statistically possible, but so unlikely you shouldn't bet your future on it. Pierce is 87 years old. He lives in a 250-month studio apartment in Cambodia. He has $35,000 left of the $550,000 he started with. He has no friends, no family relationships, no prospects. He's just waiting to die. He was you. He thought he was smart, careful, different. He thought his love and generosity would be enough. He thought age didn't matter when you found the right person. He was wrong. Don't be Pierce.